drink, nor about your body what you will put on. These are the three main categories that God continually addresses with the nation of Israel throughout the wilderness wanderings and into the promised land. Over and over and over, God addresses their craving for food and their need for food. God addresses their need for hydration and water. God addresses their need to have clothing and to stay warm and to be clothed and for their sandals to not wear out. Over and over, these are the three categories for the nation of Israel that is their greatest trigger points or their greatest temptation to abandon God, blame Him, accuse Him for not coming through. In other words, these are the greatest points of testing for the nation of Israel throughout their history. And so Jesus is playing off what they know of the ancient Israelites in the wilderness. Isn't life more than food and the body more than clothing? It's interesting, the second point when it comes to anxiety is not only our treasure, not only should I evaluate what is my treasure in this moment, what do I value most and love most, what am I pursuing, what am I giving myself to, that will usually give you insight into what's causing the worry in your life and help you kind of calm down a bit. But the second thing is your future. How are you viewing and evaluating your future? Because Jesus says, don't be anxious about what you will, future tense, put on, what you will eat, what you will drink. Because there's no need to worry about the present when you're enjoying food and drinking water and having clothes. It's about the next moment. It's about the next opportunity for a need to be met. It's about the next time a need comes up. You're already thinking through what will happen then. Who will deal with that? Where will I get the money when my credit card's maxed out when that bill shows up on the 18th? And instead of enjoying the present moment, loving God, just rejoicing in the fact that He loves you and His presence is good for you, you're focusing on the future. Because you and I, eternity is written on our hearts. So there is this concern for the future, I think, that is appropriate. We should plan. We should prepare. We should be faithful. We should steward. We should, be wise about what God has entrusted to us and not foolishly, recklessly squander all of it, right? But at the same time, most of anxiety, and I think it might even be appropriate to say all of anxiety is future-oriented. It's about what could happen, what will happen, what won't happen, what might not happen. It's all future-oriented. It's not about the past. If anything related to the past comes up and makes me anxious, it's also forward looking. It's my past might inform my future. So, what Jesus says very clearly is your life is more than your next need being met. The sum total of your life is much more than just meeting the physical needs of your body, food and water and clothing and housing, having a roof over you. Life is more than physical needs. And when you realize that, you get out of that vicious cycle of next need, filling that, fixing that craving, dealing with that. Because when you're in that spiral, money is very enticing. Money can have a real tight grip on your heart. You will do things for money that you wouldn't otherwise do if there's enough pressure around you. So real life, in the midst of our anxieties and worries, sometimes it is easy to reduce the purpose of our life down to just needs and cravings and body and next opportunity for a need to be met and next need that comes up. And Jesus is making it very clear. The purpose of your life, the sum total of your existence, cannot and should not be reduced down to just temporary needs. Those are necessary. They need to be met in order for you to continue being alive, but you and I don't secure our own future definitively, no matter how much effort and work we put into doing that. What you will drink, what you will eat, what you will put on, that's God's business. And you should be faithful in anticipating those needs. And sometimes, let me say it like this, sometimes the amount of concern we feel is appropriate because we've been lazy. We've been sluggish. We haven't been about the things of God, and we know it. And that sense of concern is to light a fire under our butts to get us doing the things that God intends to use to put food on the table the next 3 weeks, to make sure we have a house to live in the next few years. So I don't want anyone leaving here going like, oh man, any amount of concern is ungodly. No, there is good godly concern that is about the things of God, and then there is that freakish, over-obsessive concern that drives you insane and pressures you to do things that make things worse. Verse 26. Not only is your treasure often a cause of anxiety, not only is your future often a cause of anxiety, we need to be thinking through these things, but your value, weirdly enough, your value is a factor in the anxiety that you feel and deal with and wrestle with. Look at what he says in verse 26. This is an interesting turn for Jesus to take. He says, look at the birds of the air. And this is not like a cute thing he's suggesting. He's telling the crowds outside, actually observe creation for a minute with me. Let's take a minute, get outside of ourselves, and evaluate the world that goes beyond us. Okay, let's just soak that in for a minute. Here's what I want you to know about the birds you're looking at. They don't plant. They don't reap. They don't gather into barns. And yet, your heavenly Father feeds them. And here's the conclusion we're to draw. Aren't you more valuable than the birds? So if anyone ever wants to put humans on the level of animals when it comes to our value, point into this verse. We're obviously more valuable than the animal kingdom. God has made us the crown jewel of his creation. That's his choice. But birds have no planned system of preparing for future need. They're fed today by what God makes available, and the birds go out and get it. That sounds very similar to Israel every day in the wilderness, trusting there will be manna on the ground when we wake up. And we're going to go out and get what God has provided. So Jesus is saying, I think the Israelite hearing this would have known. This sounds just like God caring for it, our fathers every day in the wilderness, faithfully making sure manna's out there, faithfully making sure there was something available. And the birds here, for some reason, are a picture of that. The point is, hey, observe what the birds don't do. They're not trying to secure their future. They're not thinking about future needs. Today, we'll get what we need, and God feeds them despite what they don't do. Does God feed them through their efforts to go out and find food? Sure. Is that the reason? Is that the only way and reason that God feeds them? It's not about what the birds do, and God's like, that's the only way. It's about what they can't do and don't do. This is an interesting point to draw out because your value to God matters. Sometimes our value to God is a factor in our anxiety because we grew up with bad, not good examples in our parents of God. Like our parents didn't give us a good example of loving, caring, faithful, generous, the faithful, generous God that we serve. We don't have that example. And so when we hear that God will, our immediate, thoughts go straight to what have I experienced with caretakers when I was a child? And how did they value me? Value is a huge part of this. That's why Jesus brings it up. This is related to not being anxious. God values creation, doesn't he? Yes. That's why he cares for it. Just like you care for the things you value, just like you go after the things you value, God values you. And when that settles in, you really understand he's trustworthy and he will care for me. A lot of us wrestle with doubt and questioning, and will God because we don't understand how much he values us. And when you understand he sent his one and only son to pay for our salvation, to make way for us to have his life, to bring us back into relationship with him, you understand that he really is willing to go to the greatest length possible. He values and loves you. And that right there is a very comforting thought, because that means I have someone bigger, stronger, wiser, and just frankly better than me, who's watching my back and taking care of the things that I don't even see yet are coming. So there's a value system here. God values the created world. He values the animal kingdom. He takes care of them. Even though at any moment they could die, just like us. But how much more will he value us? Your value to God matters. It matters that you understand that. And we grow in our understanding of how much God values us. And if you think this is going to inflate ego and give you, put you on a high horse and make you prideful, that is a possibility. Absolutely. But at the same time, someone who really understands God values and loves and cherishes me, that will lead to a kind of security that is appropriate for a child to feel when they're in the care of their father. You should feel cared for. You should feel secure. And this isn't about emotions and letting that drive our lives. This is about properly aligning our emotions and feelings with the Word of God and what He says. He values you. It's not about what you can do. It's about what you can't do, and still He does. Does that make sense? This is all about, despite what you can't bring to the table, He still cares for you. Not because of what you bring to the table. Despite what you can't bring to the table, He loves you and cherishes you. Not because of what you bring to the table. Because this is, for many of you, this is a point of, this is just something God is working in on you. He's working this out. You have been raised by a culture and a society that wants you to think you are only as valuable as what you bring to the table. Like you're only as valuable as what you can do. You're only as valuable as your gifts. You're only as valuable as your skill set and your profession and your career. You're only as valuable as the money you bring home. You're only as valuable as the amount of land you have and how well you care for your kids. And I'm saying the value God has for you has nothing to do with what you can do or what you can't do. It has everything to do with really the grace He's chosen to bestow upon you in His Son. It's about what His Son can do for you, not about what we can do for God. That's not where our value is found. And so sometimes we get anxious, we get worried, we overthink all the things we're doing because we have reduced our value down to the things we do. And it's about performance, and it's about obedience, and it's about looking the part. Look at verse 27. Which of you by being anxious, so it's a state of being. Paul talks about this in Philippians 4, go read it. It's a state of being. It's a condition of living, right? Which of you by being anxious, letting anxiety dominate your thoughts, can add a single hour to your span of life? Here's the fourth point that deals with anxiety, okay? Not just your treasure, evaluate your treasure. Not just our future, not just our value, but our control. When we lack control and we know it, we freak out. Some of you are control freaks and you know it. And this is not a condemning word, this is an introspective word. Let's reflect a little bit. Let's reflect where I assume more control than I have or should have. Let's evaluate where in my life I'm controlling. I'm going to make sure my kids grow up and follow Jesus. I'm going to make sure we have a house for the next 10 years. I'm going to make sure our ministry succeeds. I'm going to make sure my husband loves me by doing X, Y. You and I struggle at times with control. And Jesus is about to say in verse 28, you can't add to your life by being anxious. That is the lie that perpetuates in your mind as you're worrying and stressing. You think that if I think about this more, if I think about it enough, I can control the situation, fix it, bring a solution to it, and God is letting you know you can't fix everything. You can't bring a solution to every problem. You don't have that capacity. You don't have that power. You don't have that ability. You don't have that foresight. You don't have the right education. You can't. There are so many things outside of your control, but worrying wants you to think, no, if I think about this long enough, I'll figure it out. If I think about this long enough, and let me ask you, when is the last time you thought about something obsessively and you found peace in doing that? When is the last time you worried yourself into a longer life? Stress robs you of life. It takes away, it robs you of the energy and the mental energy you need to actually go and do what God has called you to, because you're dedicating all your thoughts, all your time, all your energy to overthinking what will happen if my kids, what will happen if the car doesn't, what will happen, and you start playing all these hypothetical scenarios out in your mind that frankly, none of them are going to happen. And even if they do, they're outside of your control, and you assume way more control than you have. What anxiety wants to do is rob you of the present moment. See, the truth is our life is in His hands. And there are some things I have a degree of control over. God has gifted me that level of control over what I'll do with my body, over what I'll do with my thoughts, over what I'll do with the resources He's put in my hands, over what I'll do with my time. But ultimately, my existence, my eternity, my life is in the hands of a good and loving Father. Your life is not in your hands. You cannot guarantee you'll be alive tomorrow. And so is the outcome of your decisions. Because look at verse 28. Why are you anxious about clothing? And you and I are like, I'm not. I got more than enough clothes. I could clothe a small Chinese army with my wardrobe. I'm fine. So clothing isn't a point of concern for me. But look at what he says. Look at the lilies of the field. The flowers, the beauty, they grow, right? They don't toil or spin to grow. This toiling and spinning has to do with fabric, right? Making garments, making fabric, making beautiful dresses. They don't do that. They are just clothed in beauty. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Worrying puts you in the driver's seat and makes you the one in control of your life. And that's called delusion. I don't decide if I have another breath in the next hour. I don't decide if I have another day with my family tomorrow. So worrying is rooted in a false understanding of what it means to exist. He lets me exist. I don't exist by my own effort or exertion. I don't think myself into existence. It's God who brings not just me into existence, but look, He brings the growth. So many of us, point of anxiety for us is, if I'm going to do what God says, I need to know it's going to work out this way. And we want God to tell us, if I obey you here in my finances, if I give to that ministry, if I whatever, I need to know that it's going to work out like this, God, or I'm not going to do it. And you and I want to control the outcome of our decisions, the outcome of our obedience. It's just not how it works. The fruit of your life, the fruit of your decisions, the growth that comes from your decisions, that is God's job. It is not yours. God makes things beautiful. God grows things. God makes sure a seed amounts to more than what He puts potential in the seed, but He makes sure that potential gets drawn out. So, you and I, in all of our efforts, in all of our human wisdom and striving and education and pursuits, Solomon cannot clothe himself the way that God can. Does this not bring us back to Genesis 3? How does this bring us back to Genesis 3? Think about it just for a second. Hey, if you don't know me, my name is Jason, and I have some free gifts for you on our website at abovereproachministry.com. Maybe you want to learn how to study the Bible. We have free Bible classes just for you. Are you maybe a newer believer? Go ahead and check out our Christianity 101 Foundations course. Maybe you hate videos. Well, we have a podcast, so you can listen to all of our messages on whatever podcast platform you prefer. Maybe you want to join or start a discussion group. Check out our map of all the current armed discussion groups all around the world. And do you maybe live near Greenville, South Carolina? If you do, you should check out our church on Friday nights. Visit movementchurchsc.com for more information. And if you'd like to partner with us financially, you can snag a copy of my book, Fruitful, or head over to the donate page and donate through debit or credit card, PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, Patreon, or even mail a check to P.O. Box 509 Inman, South Carolina. And if you want to make a ministry connection, feel free to reach out to me on our website. Alright, I know that was a lot, but I'm done. So let's get back to the video. In Genesis chapter 3, I can take you there, but you can read it yourself. Adam and Eve sin. They try and clothe themselves with fig leaves, interestingly enough, and that's not sufficient to cover them. They, by their own efforts, can't sufficiently cover their nakedness. It's not possible. So what God does is He does it for them. Now you and I go, well, I can clothe myself pretty fine. The idea there is righteousness.